Rube, I don't know what day it is. All I know is that we're getting closer to this Super Bowl.
It's Wednesday, I'm pretty sure.
Let me check.
Pretty sure.
It is Wednesday.
It is
You're
Wednesday.
right, yeah. How you doing?
Doing well.
It's a long week down here, Super Bowl 59. We're in New Orleans. We're at Radio Row again. It's starting to fill in. Radio Row in the beginning of the week is like, there's no one here. We're kind of in our own corner by ourselves. I don't even know how to get in and out of here anymore.
Yeah, and you put like 1,500 radio people in a room, and they're all talking like this. Like, we're live on KDCKA from San Francisco at Media Day. It's just like, just talk normal. Come on, guys.
I don't know what you're talking. Start doing an accent. We have a lot of stuff to get to today. Eventually, we'll get to some questions from all you guys. Again, we're getting flooded. If you don't get your question read, we're trying. I'm trying to catch up, and you guys keep burying me in all those emails, but that's okay. We'll get to some of those in a little bit. We're actually going to talk some football today. We're going to have some matchups, Eagles offense against Chiefs defense. We'll break down some of the key matchups that could go a long way in winning this game on Sunday. There is actually a football game at the end of this, like the pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. It's there.
I know. It just seems like forever till it gets there, and then like the game kicks off, and there's like just this sense of disbelief. Like the Eagles are in the Super Bowl, and they're actually playing right now. It's a really cool moment.
I think the older I get, the more I kind of feel what Alshon was saying. Remember Alshon at Media Day or in media interview in 2017 where he's like, I think all this stuff is terrible. We should have just flown out here the day before the game.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
It is a lot of fun, though, and I think you got to make the best of it if you're the team. There's a lot of distractions involved.
Well, I'll tell you, along those lines, I talked to a few coaches today who were just so glad that they're actually practicing today. Wednesday's the first practice, and they're just like we've been down here for 2 days just doing media and appearances and all this and hype, and we just want to get on the field and get into a routine, our normal routine, so that happens today.
Yeah, that's good, and eventually we'll find out like normal practice type stuff. Now, in the Super Bowl, reporters are not allowed at the practice. There's one pool reporter for each AFC team and each NFC team, so we will find out more about that later in the day. We won't have it for this podcast, but I think the Eagles, we know their injury situation. Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens, they're going to play. It's the Super Bowl. Now, how close to 100% will they be? We'll get that answer on the field. I don't think they're going to let any hints loose on that one.
Yeah, they're going to play. And look, 2 weeks and for Landon 2 weeks and a half, I think they're going to be fine. Those guys are warriors. I'm guessing if you watch that game, you won't be able to tell that either one of them went through what they went through against Washington.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, maybe a little hindered. That back with Cam, I think, is maybe more concerning because a back injury can kind of linger for a while. And then Brandon Graham's the other one we get asked about a ton. He's talking like he's going to play, and he's also talking like this is his last game. Those two things make a lot of sense together.
Yeah. If it wasn't his last game, I'm not sure he'd be doing this, but it's BG. I think it'll be a mental boost for the team. They love him. He's just one of the most beloved guys in that locker room. And yeah, I think everybody's rooting for him.
Yeah, and we'll see how much he plays. I think probably a small percentage of snaps.
What do you think, like 12 snaps?
Yeah, I was saying like 10 to 15 snaps would be about right.
Yeah, 12's in there.
Who do you think he would take snaps from?
Nolan.
You think so?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, it might be a few from Jalix, maybe a couple from Sweat. I mean, Nolan, he's their best pass rusher. He'll be out there almost every snap.
All right. Tell me who you talked to today.
Talked to a lot of people. I had a great conversation with Jemal Singleton, the running back coach, who went into great detail about some of the things he worked with Saquon on when he got here, and just really technical things. And he said there was no great, giant thing, but you add up a bunch of little things, and it makes him a better player. Now, he said, I didn't expect him to do what he's done, but I knew he'd be better than he ever has been. And now some of that's the O-line, obviously, but one of the things they worked on was being a more efficient runner. He said he watched film of Saquon, and he was dancing too much. He was doing too much stuff when he got the ball, juking, dancing, and they really worked on, he called it getting from point A to point B as quickly and efficiently as possible. And he talked about some of the older veteran running backs, Frank Gore that he's coached in the past, Marshawn Lynch, earlier in his career, who were older and had kind of already figured that out. But they were in their early 30s, and he said, I think Saquon can figure that out in his 20s, and I think he clearly has. So that was a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, and you watch Saquon, you see it. Like, there were moments in New York where he was dancing a little too much, but you also understand it. There weren't giant holes for him to run through.
Yeah.
So it's about him just, like, trusting his blocks, and there's no reason not to trust the blocks when you have an offensive line like the Eagles had this year.
Yeah, and I think it's a hard thing for a running back to do is make that change. But yeah, I mean, you can see the results, and one cut and he's gone. I mean, why would you do something different?
Yeah, but then again, like the plays that really pop on the tape are when he gets like a 2-yard gain, and you're like, I don't even know how he didn't lose yards there. He's somehow jump cutting and getting out of the way. He spin moves in the backfield, and he somehow doesn't lose yards. Those plays are, in a way, like the most impressive ones to me at times.
Yeah, no doubt about it. When you can turn a -4 into a 2, doesn't help your average much, but yeah, it's important.
Yeah, I had a chance to catch up with C.J. Gardner Johnson on Wednesday.
What kind of mood was he in?
He was okay. I don't think he was on a platform, like a riser. I don't think he particularly liked that very much, but he was good enough. I think that it's clear that it does mean something to be in New Orleans where his career started. He has a chance to do very similar to Zach Bond, the two former Saints that are on this team, have a chance to have a really full circle moment. And look, CJ, I think in a way like had a worse relationship with the Saints than Zach Bond.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say in some ways. He did. He had a worse. They traded him away. They weren't going to sign him. Zach Bond just never really got the opportunity. I don't think the Saints wanted C.J. Gardner Johnson in their building anymore. So I think it's a nice moment for him to be back in New Orleans as a really key part to this defense.
Yeah, it's got to mean a ton to him. I mean, how would you feel if a team didn't believe in you and now you're coming back for a Super Bowl in their stadium? It's got to be a great feeling. I think it is a totally different situation with Zach Bond, but he speaks really highly of the Saints and his time here in a way that CJ does not. So same team, same defense. Both players are, obviously Zach Bond's played better than he's ever played before because he's never played before. But CJ, I think, it's the best version of CJ that we've seen.
Yeah, and we probably don't talk about CJ enough, honestly, because Zach Bond has been the highlight player of the defense. We talk about Zach Bond and Jalen Carter. They're their two best players. We talk about the rookies a lot, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. C.J. Gardner Johnson means a lot to this team. It's the big splash plays, but he had those in 22. I think he's making the routine plays this year. You don't have as high a variance with Gardner Johnson this year as he did in 22.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation, and he's been tackling well. Like, he would miss tackle. It was kind of an all or nothing in 22 with him, and he made some big plays, a lot of them. But I think the other plays he's been a better player.
I asked Jalen Hurts about CJ the other day, weaseled my way up to the front. I want to read you part of this quote because I think it gives really good insight into how important Gardner Johnson is to this team. Jalen Hurts said, CJ's always been an important piece. I hate that he ever left. I knew the spark that he brought us the first time around. He experienced those things we all experienced together. I know his eagerness to win has always been there. He's a very smart player, too. This is where Jalen kind of takes off on a different tangent. I think that's something he doesn't get a lot of credit for. His time in New Orleans playing the nickelback position and being a versatile player on the defensive backfield, it adds a lot of value. I think that's a really good point from Jalen because I think so much of CJ, we talk about the big plays, we talk about him talking crap. He is a smart player, and he's learning still how to play the safety position, and he's come so far in that respect.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think the whole secondary, you say the whole defense, but I think the secondary is all very smart, and I think it helps them play together as a unit. They really understand what offenses are trying to do against them, and they communicate well with each other, which is important. I mean, you could have 4 talented guys if they're not. And actually, I talked to Reed Blankenship about this today. He said, you have the most talented guys out there. If you're not communicating, he was talking about last year, how last year ended, it's just not going to go well. And I think that's one of the strengths of the secondary. I mean, Slay's seen it all. He's one of the smartest cornerbacks you'll find, even though he's kind of a clown in the locker room and on the field. He's a very smart player. The 2 rookies are certainly incredibly smart as well.
There are some parallels between Slay and CJ because they get typecast because they act a certain way, but man, Slay really does follow the game so closely. He's such a savvy vet with everything he does. Like, that part is what he's showing to Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, and that means a lot.
Yeah, no question about it. Here's Ron Rivera going by.
He just took a job with Cal.
Oh, did he?
Like a general manager type role with Cal.
He played for Cal. He was in the Cal-Stanford play. Ron Rivera, Eagles linebackers coach from 99 to, he was the first one to leave. I believe he left after 03.
Okay.
And he went down to Carolina, or went back to the Bears. Anyway, good guy. What were we talking about? Oh, yeah. CJ.
This is a bad place for you to be.
Yeah, I'm way too ADD for this.
Yeah, we got to get you like horse blinders. Just look at me in the camera and nowhere else.
All right, let's do that. Blinders. Blinders are on.
What else did you hear in the media scrums today?
I talked to some a bunch of guys from the defense, like I said, Jordan Davis, guys who were here last year, Reed Blankenship, about what changed and how it changed and why it changed. Reed said he came in the first day before OTA started. He said at the end of last year, he said it was a slap in the face to all of us. And he said, I came in day one and it felt different. He said there was a different, for the guys who came back who were part of it last year, he said there was a different sense of motivation, of seriousness, of getting to work. He said nobody wanted to go through that again. And just talking about the collapse at the end of last year, which was really more of a defensive collapse. It was the whole team, but it was really more of a defense collapse. And, a bunch of guys just talked about how different this year feels and how they felt it really early. And like, even though they were 2-2, I think it was Bobby King, the linebackers coach, said, he said, when you don't have preseason games, it's going to take a while now to really kind of figure out who you are as a defense. And it took us to the bye week. And he said, once it clicked, it's just everything just came together. And, obviously he wasn't here last year, but it came together really quickly. It's really an amazing story. We haven't, they were one of the worst defenses in the league when last year ended. And they're the best in the league, and they're in a Super Bowl now. So obviously Howie's a big part of it, the draft, the new guys we talked about who came in, Nolan taking a big step, Nakobe taking a big step before he got hurt. But just the whole mentality of this group is so different than last year.
And obviously Vic plays a big role in that. He's the centerpiece of it all. It is amazing. And you think about how confused. Like, you ever seen a more confused defense than the Eagles in late 2023? No one knew what they were supposed to be doing. Yeah. There was no communication. To see this defense this year, everything is so buttoned up. They know exactly where they're supposed to be. They're communicating well on the field at every single level. It's such, like, even the same players look way better in this defense, and it makes sense.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And some of their backup type players last year just took the next step, and that's a big part of it. Vic said he's never coached a defense this young that's been anywhere near this good. I don't know if anybody has, honestly. I asked him, because he's kind of got a track record of turning defenses around quickly. Yeah. And I asked what the key to that is, and he said, go to the general manager and tell him what players you need.
It's a good start.
That's a good start, but he's so self-deprecating. But he's just been remarkable. What he's been able to do with that group, new starters, new players, rookies, and get them. Here we are at the Super Bowl. It's really remarkable.
Speaking about Vic, I had a chance to catch up with Matt Nagy on Wednesday. If you remember, Nagy was the head coach in Chicago in 2018 when Vic stayed on staff, and then he ended up leaving to take the Denver job. But Nagy told me a great anecdote that every Monday he would walk into Vic's office and there would be a stack of papers like 3 inches thick, and Vic would be flipping pages and marking down things in a pencil, going through all of his tendency breakers, getting ready for the week. That was his process. And that was what Nagy said really stood out to him working with Vic, was just how meticulous he was and how unique his process was to get to a game and then call the way he calls the game, which is, I remember in the summer, that was the one thing. We had met Vic and we're hearing all these great things about him. And Nick Sirianni goes, yeah, wait until we get to the games and you watch him actually call it. That's his real strength. We've seen that this year. He has such an incredible knack of calling games as individual games, right? It's not like this is his defense and he runs it and this is what he does every single week. It changes based on his personnel, based on the team they're playing.
Right.
And it was something Patrick Mahomes actually said on Wednesday too. He said it's a chess match. Like every time I've played Vic, he's done something different.
That's interesting, yeah. And I think it was Reed Blankenship who said, the first time, he said, the first time I went up to his office, he was just sitting there buried in film. Mm-hmm. He said, I'm going to light this guy. Yeah. And he's a film. I mean, all these guys watch a ton of film. He's next level with it.
He is. And the cool thing is, like, you would think, is he watching, like, old tape? No, he doesn't. He kind of gets rid of the old stuff. He doesn't even keep the notes that deep in his office. He's up on everything new. And I think that's sometimes the fear with an older coach is that they're going to be too set in their ways and not going to be willing to adapt. It's been amazing how willing he's been to adapt really his whole career.
Yeah, and you're right. A lot of older coaches, it's like what I did 10 years ago, 20 years ago works, so I'm going to keep doing it. Vic is cutting edge for a guy who's 66.
That's how you get left behind.
Yeah.
And we've seen coaches get left behind. We've seen coaches who, this is what I run. It worked in 1995. It's like, well, guess what, buddy? It doesn't work anymore. So, yeah. Anything else from today?
I mean, I talked to half the team, but those are the highlights. And, it was a good day.
Okay.
And, again, these guys love seeing us in a way that they don't when we're back home. So,
I got a lot of good stuff from the Chiefs today. I always wish you had the opportunity to get the other viewpoint on a game, right? And we never get that during the week. Sometimes you hear it but you don't get to ask the questions.
Right.
So I always enjoy the Super Bowls because I get to ask football questions to these guys. So I talked to all three of the Chiefs' interior offensive linemen about facing Jalen Carter. It's kind of fascinating because they're talking about sliding protection to him, but then they say, well, wait a second, because they have guys who can beat us one-on-one. We have to be careful doing it. Trey Smith called him an unorthodox pass rusher.
Interesting.
Which is really true. If you watch Jalen Carter, I think I made the comparison once to Michael Bennett, which is not a perfect one, obviously, because Bennett played on the edge, but there is an unorthodox nature to Carter's game, and I think that's got to be kind of difficult when you're facing a guy like that to know how to prepare for it.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and he is. I mean, you see Jalen Carter do different things every time you watch him. I think he's very instinctive, and I think he kind of, I don't want to say makes it up as he goes along, but I think he really understands on each snap, how to get the most out of that snap based on what the offense is doing, what the linemen are doing.
He's the least mechanical player ever.
Yeah.
Everything has a flow to it, even when you think about the two plays against the Rams late in the game, faking a stunt inside and then breaking it back outside. He set him up for that all game. And he did it twice in a row in a crucial moment. And after the first one, the guy's probably thinking, the center's there's no way he's doing it again. And he does it again to get another pressure. It's just this incredible feel
that might
he
have
has
saved
for
the
the
season.
game.
Those two plays might have saved the season.
They were 13 yards away, Rube.
They were on the 13-yard line.
Yeah, so
they were on the 22 for the second one, but yeah.
Thanks.
Hey, you got it. He's a fun player. I think he's going to have a big game Sunday, Jalen.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that's a really good matchup because basically the Chiefs we'll talk about this later, but they have one good guard. The other guards we can have a great center. So you have to kind of pick your poison there. Do you leave your good guard on Jalen Carter? Do you slide the center? And then that's going to leave a really big one-on-one mismatch with the other guard.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how they play it.
I also weaseled my way into Travis Kelce's presser today.
How'd that go?
A lot of people around. I found my moment, ducked in there. I just wanted to ask him about his relationship with the Eagles now that Jason Kelce is retired. And it was kind of what I suspected. He said he's really close to Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson in particular. He said he considers those guys brothers.
It's really interesting. I think that's rare.
Yeah, I think so. And it's just because, Jason had been teammates with those guys for so long, and they're so close. And we know how close Jason and Travis are.
Yeah.
They did the whole album together.
Right.
They spent a lot of time. Whenever they were both playing, they would be at each other's games when they could be. So I think there is a strong bond there. And also, Travis brought up that his sister-in-law is a pretty diehard Eagles fan.
I've heard that.
The only other thing I wanted to mention, I caught up with DeAndre Hopkins about Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. And I asked him, what stands out about those two guys from a receiver who's had a really fantastic career. He said their competitiveness. He said you could drop those two in a boxing ring without any training, and they'd put up a heck of a fight.
Interesting.
Yeah, I like that. And he's like, I can just see that off the tape. I don't like have any kind of intimate knowledge of these guys, but I can see the competitiveness they play with.
No, it's totally true. I mean, AJ, we know it. He's big, strong, strapping guy and physical, but Devontae's ability to play physical brand of football in his size just blows my mind. I mean, it's incredible. So I like the way you put that.
All right, want to get into some matchups?
Yeah.
There's a football game. Sometimes we forget that. The first one in this game is Jalen Hurts versus Steve Spagnuolo's blitzes. We know Spags is going to try to heat him up a little bit, and it's not just like the same blitz all the time. Spags is really good about changing it up, but also picking his spots.
Yeah, and he'll always give you something you haven't seen, haven't prepared for. And look, he learned from Jim Johnson, who is one of the more creative blitzers that we've seen, and he's been carrying on that tradition. So that's why you want to be able to run the ball against this team. But part of the reason. So, I mean, that's what they do. But those blitzes aren't going to hurt you if Saquon's getting 10 yards a pop. So I think that's going to be huge. I think the Chiefs are susceptible. They have not been a good run defense for about the last month and a half. Their numbers have gone way down in the playoffs and the last few games of the regular season. So that's such a huge matchup, because if you can run on the Chiefs, it just takes away so much of what Spags, so much of his advantage against you.
Yeah, real quick, blitz numbers. The Chiefs this year, 34% blitz rate, 5th in the NFL. They're a little under that in the playoffs, but I'd imagine this is going to be a high blitz game for them.
I would think so. I do think Jalen's been a lot better, like a lot better. You think this time last year, coming off the Tampa game, I mean, he just couldn't function against it. And, he has answers now. He's got a coach who knows what to do with it, and I think he's seeing it and diagnosing it better and making plays against it. He sees a blitz as an opportunity to make a play, not an opportunity for the other team.
Blitz rate of over 50% last year when these two teams played. People forget that they played last year. Everyone goes back to the Super Bowl. These two teams have a more recent game that they have tape on that they're watching as they get ready.
Yeah, and Eagles beat them, and I think that doesn't hurt. I think that was their last win. Was that before Buffalo or after Buffalo? It was just before Buffalo, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
It was like that was like their last gasp that got them to 10-1, and those two games.
Yeah, they were 9-1 when they beat the Chiefs, and then 10-1 when they beat the Bills.
Yeah,
and then it all went to heck.
And then it all went downhill. But yeah, that was a heck of a win. And I think for the guys who were part of it, they maybe take some of the mystique out of it.
Yeah, and look, the Eagles won that game, but the blitz was effective against Jalen. His numbers against it in that game, 41% completion percentage, 83 yards, and an interception, 3 sacks. So
he's got to be better.
Yeah. But he has been in these playoffs, so I think there's some encouraging signs. Now, you mentioned Saquon already, but I agree with you. I think he can run on the Chiefs, who in the playoffs have gotten leaky.
Yeah, they have, and it's the end of the regular season, which is interesting. Plus, Saquon has had success against even the best run defenses.
Yeah, you think back to that Baltimore game.
Yeah.
Number 1 run defense, and he just ran wild.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. There's been a few. I just think where this running game is now, he's rested. He hasn't played in 2 weeks. I think it's going to be a big Saquon game, and I just think they're so confident as a group. I was talking to Jemal Singleton about this, just how, and I wrote about this maybe a month ago, just how the O-line and Saquon it's not like 5 offensive linemen and a running back. He said it's just like 6 guys working together. They're so locked in. They're just such a unit, and I think they kind of have been even better in the postseason than the regular season. So can't wait to see what they do with the running game.
There's almost something really fun about that thought, that the Eagles are going to run the ball, and they know it. They're going to tell it to you. The Chiefs know they're going to run the ball. They're going to try to stop it, and they just might not be able to. And that's kind of the calling card of this Eagles offense, is that they're going to run it down your throat whether you like it or not. And I think they're going to be able to in this game. Now, the Chiefs have not given up a 100-yard running back rusher all year. They gave up over 100 to Lamar Jackson way back in, I think it was week 1.
Yeah.
So, but the last 2 weeks, Joe Mixon had 88 yards against him, and then James Cook had 85.
And they were both on not a lot of carries.
Yeah, I really thought that the Bills should have kept running more, in that game, it had been effective, and they weren't like out of the game. So,
and they're good backs, but they're not Saquon.
Exactly, and they're not this offensive line. So,
and Kellen's he's gonna keep dialing it up.
Mm-hmm. The Chiefs do have good linebackers. Obviously, Nick Bolton is kind of the key to it all. Drew Tranquill is really good. Leo Chanel, but they haven't been very good against tight ends this year. You look at their numbers; they're actually, I have it right here. They've been rough against them. They gave up more yards to opposing tight ends in the regular season than any other team. 106 passes for 1,191 yards and 5 touchdowns against this defense.
Yeah, those are interesting numbers. And Goddard has been so good, not just this year, but really his whole career in the postseason. He's up to, I believe, 7th in NFL history for catches by a tight end in the postseason. He's obviously played a lot of postseason games. But he's just been so solid, really, since he came back from that injury. I think he's a good matchup, and he's got a great connection with Hurts, and yeah, what's the over/under on Goddard receiving yards versus Kelce?
I don't know. What do we like? Who's going to have more?
Yeah.
I don't know. The Kelce thing's funny because he had 117 in the divisional round and then didn't have many against the Bills. And the divisional round was the most he had all year.
Yeah. I'm not sure he's the player he used to be.
You're not sure? He's definitely not.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, he's just definitely not. He's not as fast as he once was.
Yeah.
He still has the rapport with Mahomes, but it's not. He's clearly not the same player. Whereas Goddard, yes, he's missed time, but when he's been healthy, he's as good this year. He's younger, but he's as good as he's ever been. Yeah,
I think that's true, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens if they draft a tight end. I don't get too far ahead of ourselves, but man, when he's healthy, I still think he's a top 5 tight end.
Yeah, I do too. Chris Jones, this is a big one.
Yeah.
Here we go. So I was trying to find the note I had. You get it. Chris Jones is really good. He's been one of the best defensive tackles in the league for a long time.
Long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's relentless, and he's seen it all. He's done it all. He's just a savvy veteran, consistent, doesn't have bad games. He's in great shape. You see him make plays at the end of games, kind of like Jalen Carter. He's been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, he has. What do you think about this interior offensive line? They've been a little banged up. Now they're facing a Chris Jones. Is that something that concerns you? And to what level?
I mean, the only concern is if they're considerably below 100%. I think they're – I mean, look, he's going to make some plays in this game, but if you have a healthy, Dickerson and Becton and Juergens, boy, I think you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I do too. Next one is A.J. Brown against Trent McDuffie, who – still a really good corner, but this year he's playing outside. He kind of took over for L'Jarius Sneed, who left in free agency. I think, honestly, McDuffie's best spot is still inside because he's a little undersized, under 6 foot. And if you get him on A.J. Brown, I really like that matchup for the Eagles.
I mean, I like A.J. Brown on anybody, any corner, but yeah. It was good to see him finally get going in the NFC Championship game after a couple, they weren't bad games because he just
low volume games.
But yeah, low volume is a good way to put it. I mean, I don't think they're going to throw a ton in this game, but getting Goddard and AJ going is going to be huge.
Yeah. And then Jalen Watson is healthy now, so he's their other outside corner. You have Connor on the inside. So I don't know if McDuffie will travel. He has the ability to. He can play anywhere on the field. But when you have a Devontae Smith, I think it makes it tougher to travel because then you're given a matchup to Watson on Smith all game. So I think they might stick side to side and maybe switch them here and there in key moments. But we talk about this a lot. The Eagles really feel comfortable with their matchups against almost any secondary.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of whether or not they'll throw it.
Yeah, and maybe we don't talk about Devontae enough because of AJ, but I mean he's the best postseason receiver in Eagles history. Yeah. When you look at the numbers, I mean he hasn't had those huge games. He's always getting 50, 60, 70 yards, and they add up. And just such a solid player. And I think they're great matchups there.
Yeah. Anything else I missed that you think we should talk about? And we have a few more days to hit this. It's not like the game's coming tomorrow.
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. I do want to mention the little illness going around with the Eagles. A few coaches, players are sick. I don't think there's anything to be concerned about. Jalen Carter missed media availability. Vic Fangio was supposed to. Then he showed up anyway. Did Vic say that he just walked down?
I didn't ask him. I didn't have a chance to ask him, but he wasn't going to be there. They took his name card away. They took him off the list, and then there he was.
Yeah, look, this kind of happens. You're traveling. You're in front of all these people. It's kind of like a petri dish. We saw it back in 2017. Some guys got sick.
You got sick.
I got sick that year. We remember like Jalen a few weeks ago, little different voice, so he might still be fighting through something, but like I don't think there's anything that's going to keep these guys off the field.
Yeah, I think Jalen's going to play.
All right, let's take a little break and we'll answer some questions on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and nissanusa.com today.
All right, we're back on the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. Reuben Frank, Dave Zangaro, in the midst of wildness and craziness at Radio Row.
I did forget to share my exchange with Jordan Davis, who was being asked. He was asked who in the locker room has the best taste in music.
Oh.
And he said, "Oh, I do." And the guy was like, "Well, what do you like?" He's like, "Oh, I like gospel. I like R&B. I like hip hop. I like rock. I like yacht rock."
Okay.
Jordan Davis he's listening to Little River Band right now. Orleans. He's a yacht rock guy.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like that.
I like that.
Jordan Davis is really fun.
Interesting guy.
Nick Sirianni at his press conference today was asked about Jordan Davis, and he said, everyone thinks Slay's the funniest player, and Slay's funny, but Jordan Davis is really funny too.
He's got a great personality, and I wish he shared it more.
Around us, you're right. He shares it plenty, just not when we're there.
That's true.
But when we're sometimes he does though. I was watching one of the networks gave him a camera today, and he was roaming around talking to teammates. He's a hoot. He's a fun guy.
He is.
All right, let's get to some questions. Eagle-Eyed NBC Uni is the email address. You have the QR code. If you're watching on YouTube, you can scan it and send us a question that way. We'll jump right into it. First one up from Nathan. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying your week in New Orleans. A bit of a fun question. Who had a better season? Carson's 2017 or Saquon's 2024? Personally, I think Carson. I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback not named Peyton Manning play that well over a 10-game stretch. He was impossible to tackle sometimes. Interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, he was incredible, but, I mean, come on.
There's been 9 2,000-yard seasons in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean,
ever.
And then you look what he's done in the postseason. You look at the 60-yard runs. He's doing things no running back's ever done. Carson had a great 10-game stretch and then got hurt. I really think he had it might have been the best 10-game stretch any Eagles quarterback's ever had. Maybe Foles in 13. Randall in 90 had a great stretch. But, yeah, no contest.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's definitely Saquon. Next one is from Jake. Hi, David and Rube. My question is simple. Is Jalen Hurts the best Eagles quarterback of all time?
And it's one of those questions that, he's been a starter for 4 years, and you compare him to Donovan, who went to 1 Super Bowl but 4 NFC Championship games, won 9 playoff games, or Randall and what he was able to do. And then there's Foles. Where does he fit in? He only won 8 games as an Eagle, but one of them was the Super Bowl. So it's a tough question because what are you basing it on? I think he's very close. I think he's very close to. 2 Super Bowl. He's the only quarterback to take 2 teams to a Super Bowl. 4 straight playoff appearances. He's 26.
That's the thing. If we're asking right now, probably not. But it's not like this is the end. He's got probably a lot of years left here.
You would think. Who would you say? You can make a case for a couple guys. Do you say Nick Foles just because he won the big game? Do you go with Donovan for a lot of wins over a long period of time? But
came up a little smaller in some situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 home losses.
I think I would still say Donovan. The body of work was so big. I mean, Nick Foles kind of ruins things because it's like, I don't know how you quantify it.
Yeah, it's hard for me to sit here right now and say Donovan was better than Jalen Hurts. I mean, he was really good. Yeah. He was a really good player, especially from 2000, 2004. And then, he wasn't great. I mean, he had a couple really good stretches after that, but it was really 5 years. And then
it's funny as we're talking about this because there's a decent chance he could just be like roaming around us.
Yeah.
And he hears you saying it. He just like jumps over the boards here and comes get you.
Yeah. I think I'm getting close to saying Jalen is.
He wins it?
Well, yeah.
No doubt?
No doubt.
Okay. Next question is from Noah.
And he is going to win it.
Hey, David and Rube. We're not ready for predictions yet. That's the last part of the...
it just came out. I'm sorry.
From
Can
Noah.
we edit that out, please?
Hey, David and Rube. It recently occurred to me how blessed the Eagles are in having defeated the Patriots instead of the Jaguars in Super Bowl 52. I somehow had never thought of how different everything would feel if the Eagles outlasted Blake Bortles and the Jags instead of Tom Brady and the Patriots. Imagine the inevitable discourse we'd be hearing from non-Eagles fans if our only Super Bowl victory came against Blake Bortles. Curious to hear how you guys think a Super Bowl victory over the Jags might have changed the otherwise incredible story of the 2017 Eagles season.
I don't think anybody would have been too disappointed in it. I mean, I don't think anybody would be at the parade going up Broad Street saying, man, I just can't believe they just beat the Jaguars and not the Patriots. I don't think anybody would have cared.
Maybe down the line.
There's great storylines like the handshake stuff with Foles.
I think there is something to the idea that they beat the best.
Slayed the dragon.
Yeah, I think it makes for a better story. Now, I don't think anyone would be saying like it wasn't a worthy Super Bowl if they.
But if it was Jacksonville, nobody would have been like the Patriots wouldn't even have been on the radar.
And the Jags would have beaten them.
Right.
Like they would have already slayed the dragon.
Right. So, yeah, I'm not.
But I do think it's a better story that it was the Patriots
in retrospect.
And if they win this one, it's a better story that it's the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes.
Right. And then when Brady was on the field a couple of weeks ago walking around the sidelines and was just getting roundly booed, that was really cool.
I think he enjoyed that a little bit.
I think he did.
And then there was the game earlier in the season where Brendan Graham walked up to him and fake strip sacked him again.
Yeah.
That was good.
That was funny.
Two Michigan guys having some fun. Next one from Bill. Hey guys, love the podcast. I had a question about Saquon. I've seen some of his Penn State highlights, and I saw that he returned kicks. Do you think there's a chance that the Eagles might have Saquon return a kick or a punt the way Brian Westbrook and Deshaun did in times of emergency, desperation, or trying to swing momentum? No, he hasn't done it. I mean, if this was something they had worked on for these situations...
He doesn't even practice it.
He doesn't practice it. He's not one of that group. I mean, we're not watching practice this week, but it will be hard to imagine all of a sudden they're sending him back there. He was a good kick returner in college. He had a 27.8 average. He was 28.4 in his junior year before he came into the draft. So he was good at it, but he hasn't done it in the NFL.
And I think they have pretty good kick return options who've done well.
Did well in the championship game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like their kick return options, whether it's Kenny Gainwell or Will Shipley or Isaiah Rodgers. They've been pretty good.
All three of them have had good returns, and you certainly don't want to risk getting Saquon hurt on a kick return, where it's not the safest place to be.
Next one from Ed.
Hey, Ed.
Hi, Reuben, Dave. Love your show. I'm originally from Bucks County and moved to New Zealand in 2000, so your show really brings back the memories of diehard Eagles fandom.
Bucks County representing.
I didn't like that.
Woo.
Early in the year, the defense was struggling, and I believed that most were slow to react, and it goes to show in the poor tackling. But I think some of the turnaround was that youth on our defense just bought in faster than if we would have had a more veteran squad. Is this your take as well? So he sees maybe the youth was a good thing because they didn't have to break tendencies, and they just bought into Vic's system.
I think it was just having good players. Yeah, I think if you have good players who are buying in, it's not going to matter if they're a 10-year veteran or a rookie. I mean, they just happen to be really young, but I think they would have, if they had good players, I think they would have had the same arc as they did.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes the young players just stay healthy. They're on the field more. They're faster. That helps. But I do give them credit for buying into the level they have.
No doubt.
Next one from John. Love the pod. You guys are great together. I have 3 great Eagles mysteries that you probably can't solve but just on the off chance that you can shed some light on these, here it goes. Number 1, Bryce Huff. What on earth explains his total inability to get on the field?
He's not very good.
He had 10 sacks last year.
I know.
The advanced numbers the last 2 years say he was good.
I know.
Is it just a matter of him not fitting in what Vic needed him to fit into?
I don't know. I thought he was starting to come on before he got hurt, and I think that injury, was he out a month?
About a month. He had the wrist surgery.
Had wrist surgery, and
he played with it for a few games with it in a cast before the surgery.
I think that kind of. I'm not saying he would have been good if without that. But I think also sometimes, like the analytics say, he should be doing this. Sometimes it's just wrong. They don't really project what kind of player somebody will be in more snaps. I don't know. He'll be here next year. Just contract. He's got to be.
We talked to Howie Roseman before flying down
for
the Super Bowl.
Yeah, he said the story of Bryce Huff has yet to be written.
Yeah, but he also admitted that sometimes he's a little stubborn about the guys he brings in. To me, this was just like a disconnect between the front office and the coaching staff, which we give them credit when it hits, like Zach Bond or obviously Saquon. But this is something where it didn't line up right.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'd be surprised if he's even on the field Sunday. Maybe a snap or two.
But with BG most likely playing, I don't think maybe at all.
Might not get on the field.
Yeah. Number 2, why did defensive coordinators retreat into a shell once they get a good lead? Most fans would say the prevent defense prevents nothing other than your team from winning. Vic does it less than others, but still does use this generally ineffective tactic.
Well, you don't want to give up a big play in those situations, and that's what you're trying to do. And you hope that you don't get gashed and give up 17 plays and a touchdown. But I think, in theory, it makes sense. It's sound.
Yeah,
keep everything in front of you.
And the theory is that, like, at that point, you're getting help from the clock. So if you can force them to take these long drives, like maybe they'll score, but they're going to burn clock off, and you need that if you have a lead. So, like, I think the theory's right. I think at times that's true about this defense. Like, there have been moments where they got to hold on to a lead and they get a little too lax.
Yeah.
But I think they've been better at this than some other defenses in the past.
Yeah, I would think so. And it's tough. I mean, it's also tough, like, when you're on the field for 17 plays and then the offense goes 3 and out, and then all of a sudden you're back on. Or if you think you have the game won and the game's over, and then there's a turnover or a drop, and all of a sudden you have to go back out there and play. Those are tough things, I think, for a defense to adjust to.
The third mystery here from John. It's almost ancient history now, but I've never heard a full and honest explanation of why Carson Wentz has seemingly lost the ability to play quarterback at a reasonably high level. What happened?
I just think that the injuries really kind of took away. I mean, when he was playing really well, I mean, he made so many plays on the move, escaping sacks. He was physically just such a strong, powerful, athletic specimen. I just think he lost a dimension of that with all the injuries, and there was a bunch of them, and even the concussion. I mean, he had the back, he had, the knee. Obviously, I just think they took its toll, and he went from being this like elite athlete to being an average athlete, and and so much of his success was based on being an athlete.
Yeah, he relied on that a lot, and then he still tried to play the game.
Yeah,
like he had all that still in his bag, and he really didn't. And that's why, like, you think back to Doug Peterson calling it hero ball. He was trying to play hero ball, but he didn't have the cape anymore, and I think that showed up in a big way.
And we've seen quarterbacks who, I mean, Donovan's a good example, who later in their career, when they physically aren't the runner or the athlete that they used to be, they make adjustments. And I mean, even Randall, like he ran for 1,000 yards here, 985 and 1,000 including the playoffs. And when he was great in Minnesota that year with Billick, when they should have gone to the Super Bowl and Dennis Green turtled at the end of the fourth quarter, he had, like, if you take away his kneel downs, he had like 18 runs that whole year. He learned how to become a passer, a quarterback. And I just think if you can't do that, if you can't adjust to where your body is, you're not going to have success.
Yeah.
Good mysteries, though. I like mysteries. Kind of feel like
next one
Columbo
from
right now.
Jay. Hey, Dave and Rube, been a fan of the podcast since the 2023 preseason. Haven't missed an episode since.
Wow.
Keep up the great work,
Thank you.
fellas. This is a completely irrelevant question, but on an earlier episode
Dave's used to irrelevant questions because he works with me.
on Super Bowl week, Rube had mentioned going to see MJ Lenderman perform, whom I've been thinking about going to see myself. Hopefully this reaches y'all before the performance. It did, I just didn't see it before then. But I wanted to ask Rube, what songs would you like to see him perform? And maybe afterwards, he can revisit the question and say some of the songs on the set and how he would rate the overall live performance. I know this is an obscure one nonetheless. Thank y'all for the great pods all year long. Have a good day.
Very polite.
Yeah.
I went to see Wild Pink and MJ Lenderman at Tipitina's, a legendary New Orleans club, last night.
How big is that venue?
It's smallish. It's like shaped like Union Transfer, like with the balcony, but it's like maybe half the size.
Okay.
So it's really intimate. I mean, he could have played at a much bigger place, and I think he will. He's blowing up. It was sold out. It was just packed to the gills. He was incredible. I got to start with Wild Pink though. The opener, amazing band. They're from Brooklyn, L.A., Saugerties, New York, and Philly, and they were amazing. I've seen them a few times. Friends with their singer John Ross.
John Ross?
Yeah, different John Ross.
Oh, different one.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not that you. We
I
were
thought
talking
it was
about that.
moonlighting as the
I
former
said,
first
you're
round
the
pick.
only John Ross who's in New Orleans today, this week. But they were incredible. It's probably the best I've ever seen them. The sound in there is perfect. It's incredible. And then MJ Lenderman just crushed it. It's the first time I've seen him. Really impressive stuff. I say She's Leaving You and that song On Your Knees are probably the two best on the new album. And they were probably the two best last night, but it was a terrific show.
Good. Glad you had a good time. If you have a question for us, eagleeye@nbcuni.com. This is where I tell everyone, if you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click that like button, subscribe there as well. If you appreciate the daily pods during Super Bowl week and you haven't done those things, please do them now. Rube, any final words?
Just appreciate you guys for watching and listening. Thank
All right,
you.
for Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.